On. Oh, can you hear me now? Let's see. Yep, it looks like we're good now. I don't think you heard any of my intro music there, but I am still figuring this out, as you can tell with live streaming. I thought this would be a lot easier than my standard process of producing videos today. It's kind of complicated, but I wanted to share with you guys some things I've learned in my time of flipping houses, buying real estate. Honestly, I don't have as much experience as some of the other people you can find out there YouTubing and stuff like that, but my father has done quite a bit of buying, selling properties, and I know that I have other friends who have done a lot there. But my experience is unique, and I think it's one that you could easily get into. It would be really easy to start where you're at and start finding properties that you can flip. Now, the whole process of buying and selling houses is grueling, let's just say that, especially if you have to fix up houses, and especially if you're going to fix them up yourselves. I always run into people who are like, oh, I want to start flipping houses, I want to buy, sell property and stuff like that, and they come from that background of having watched Fixer Upper and other shows like that, and I appreciate those shows, but at the same time it gives an unrealistic view of what buying and selling a house and flipping, that whole process looks like. Anybody can make it look easy when you have millions of dollars and a whole team of people to work on things for you. So anyways, my process, we're going to talk a little bit about finances. I'm going to go through some of the numbers that I have and how I got to the point where we're at now. So we have a house and we have some debt on it. We have a home equity line of credit that we're doing some expansions, renovations to the house. Now, where I started at, I spent the first few years of my adulthood not doing anything of monetary, like fiscal gain to myself, and I did not prepare myself well in that respect. But I did get to do a lot of unique things and spent a lot of time overseas and doing things that I really enjoyed, and I wouldn't take those things back. But when I hit real life, got married, had to get a real job and stuff, you know, you really got to pick up the pace if you want to catch up, if you feel, you know what I mean. So when I started out, I had actually got to buy a house right after I moved to the city I'm now living in South Carolina. But that came with unique circumstances. Obviously, you need credit if you're going to take on debt. And in my case, years prior, I had a birthday party, and one of the Frisbees, it was at the beach, and one of the Frisbees went over one of the fences. I went to go get it, and I stepped on a nail. In the process of that, I had to go to the hospital, get x-rays, and it cost a lot of money that I didn't have. So the long story short of it is that it went to a collections agency. My insurance, which at that time I was under my father's insurance, and that ended up paying the debt after it had gone to a collection agency. So that little bit there, that little glitch in the system of it going to collection agency and then being paid off allowed me to have credit. And prior to that point, I had been doing swag bucks, which was very popular to, make a few dollars here and there, do those tasks. I wasn't able to get any credit cards or things like that. And after that, I suddenly had credit because I had debt against my name that got paid off. Now, that gives me an advantage when I came to taking on debt to buy a house. That point about, obviously, like stepping on a nail and getting x-rays and having debt and stuff is not fun. As far as getting credit to get your initial debt to buy a house or get a mortgage, I can't really speak to how to do that yourself because I never had to go through the process of doing that. But I can say that there are tons of programs out there, and there are people who will give you loans for even if you don't have credit. Now, the other way to do it is to save up money and buy a house. And man, houses are expensive nowadays, and so that's not a route that I was going to take. So, leading up to my time moving to where I'm at right now, I had not put any money away. I did not have a steady job. So I was working at Chick-fil-A. I had worked there for about 2 months, maybe, and I went to Zillow. As you can see here, I have Zillow up. I went to Zillow, and the funny thing is, I just started looking around for houses. I had no clue what I was looking for. And I'm going to give you a few tips here, better things to look for, depending on what process you're wanting to take as far as living in the house for a couple years or trying to just flip the house. That can look a bit different. But when I stepped into the process, I had no idea what I was doing, and I also had no money. But there are state programs and there's federal assistance. And what I got was an FHA, Federal Housing Administration loan. And the way that worked is I didn't have, I had credit, but I didn't have money, and they had a paired loan with it that would give my down payment. They would give $5,000 to my down payment, and I would pay that back. Or no, that would be forgiven. That's what it was. It would be forgiven over every year that I lived in the house, $1,000 per year. So if I lived in the house for 5 years, I wouldn't have to pay back the down payment. So I had no money going to this. I had a few $100s that I had to put up as like the initial, what was it called again? It's escrow. And then I had a few $100s that I had to put into it later on because of some things that came up, where there was an oil tank in the backyard that was for heating in prior years, and it had to be removed as part of the FHA loan. Now, FHA loans have their own stringent requirements, and their VA loans are much more stringent and things like that. But I don't want to get into all the different types of loans that you can get into. I want to get into the process of this. So what I recommend is you find an agent. I was very fortunate to find an agent that when I clicked, hey, I want to see this house on Zillow, it connected me with an agent that I've used for years for all the properties until this house. And this house was a unique situation. And I'll get into that soon. Now, you need a good agent if you don't know what you're doing. I'm kind of at the point where I feel comfortable enough to do my own buying and selling. And I also, at one point, had a real estate license. Now, obviously, everything I'm telling you in this is my own experience, and I don't even know if I can say recommendations. I don't know how, I'm not a licensed professional in any way, and I can't give legal advice. I can't give like, whatever, legal financial advice, I guess, whatever you have to say there. I'm putting out that disclaimer because these are my experiences, and you may be able to take them and do that. And I want you to give you hope in this. But I also want you to be aware of the work that's going to take and how draining that's going to be. So let's go through some of the numbers. That was the process leading up to buying my first house. It was $100,000, and, or actually, no, it was less than that. Sorry, I'm thinking of a different house. It was $98,000. It was just $2,000 less than what I said. $98,000 that I did not have. The government gave me $5,000 of that, and so my debt was $98,000 with $2,000 a year being removed from it. So what we did is, in that house, we did a few upgrades. I think we put sheetrock in one room, we painted some rooms, painted the kitchen and things, but I did not do any massive renovations to the house. There was one, pallet walls were super popular, so I put a pallet wall in the bathroom, and that was cool. A lot of friends really liked that. And maybe I should do some videos on how to do pallet walls or some of the other things. I've done a lot of work on all over the house, up in the attic, in the crawl space, just everywhere. So having that house, we went to sell it after 2 years. Now the reason for this is because after 2 years of owning a house, that income up to $250,000 that you make profit off that house is non-taxable. You can just make money and not be taxed. That's an amazing thing. It's ingenious. Now if you're married, you can do $500,000, which is just a crazy number that you can do tax-free. No worries there. I am very happy when those times come to just not worry about taxes in that. But when you get into the flipping game, you do get taxed, and we'll talk about that in a second. So, first house, the $98,000 with a $5,000. I lived in it for 2 years. My wife and I lived in it for 2 years. We sold it, and at that time, we had $2,000 knocked off the debt, and we had paid down a little bit of the debt. We weren't trying very hard at that moment because more of the plan was to, move every 2 years, roughly, was kind of the plan. It turned out to be the plan after a while. And so we sold that house, and at the time that I bought it was 2015. And 2 years after that, yeah, I'm thinking, man, this is a long time ago. 2015, 2 years after that, the market had continued to rise. And obviously I'm not in control of the market, and that was just in our favor. The timing of it was great. Now, we listed it with our agent that I had bought with, and we sold it for $140,000. My agent is more careful, I could say, and I was always willing to, based on other people's advice, to press my luck and put a little bit higher, trying not to be greedy, because I knew that other houses were listed much higher than ours, comparable houses, but I wanted to at least get what we thought it was worth, and somebody took us at 140. There were a couple complications there. We had a radon check and test, and radon is just, I don't really, not that I can say it's a hoax, but I don't really believe in all of the hype around it. So I did some research on radon, and I came up with my own system for it. I should go into another video where I detail this, but basically the idea of how to get radon, it's a gas that comes up through the ground, gets stuck in your house, and you die of cancer or something like that. What they do is they put in a vapor barrier, they enclose your entire space, and they put a pipe under there, and they suck all the rain in and out, and they put a fan out your roof. From what I've read, scientifically, radon's generally heavier than air and falls, so spitting out the top of your house didn't make any sense to me. I did something similar. So what you do is you go to Amazon, you buy this $125 radon fan that you can put on a pipe. You go buy PVC pipe, you put it under your house, you drill a bunch of holes in it, and you plug that fan in. Then you also put vapor barrier, and you seal it. You tape it with red tape all over the bottom against the bricks and everything, and then it sucks out the radon and spits it outside. That was the gist of what I built. Most people were looking to charge me about $6,000 to do that. I did it for about $250, maybe $300, and it took me, I'd say 4 or 5 hours. It was well worth my time to do it. I definitely recommend it. And so in this game of flipping things, it's, at least in my area, like in South Carolina, it is different than in a big city when you're dealing with much more expensive houses. I'm talking about most houses I'm looking at are under $100 or well under $100,000 if I can get them. But if you're dealing with a bigger city and you're in like California and you have other people that you're paying to do work, I tend not to pay people for work, especially the first time. And if I learn that it's something that's worth paying somebody for, I definitely will. And I'll talk about some of those things that are worth paying people for and what are not. On this house, we actually had to replace the roof, and I called up a bunch of buddies and fed them pizza, and we replaced the roof, and it took an entire day. It was very long. So after we sold the house for $140,000, after real estate fees and obviously paying back our debt, which was about $93,000, we ended up having just over $30,000 left. And when I went to Zillow. So I have Zillow up here because I was going to show you a few different places to look for houses. So we went to Zillow, and there wasn't much coming up prior to our closing date. We were getting really close, but we found this one house finally and called the guy. And at the time, we were actually in the hospital because my daughter had some health issues at the time, and so I went over at the front. I went from the hospital to the house with my agent, and we brought like a contract for offer and everything, and Skyped my wife at the hospital, and we're like, yeah, let's buy it. That house ended up being an amazing house. I some ways regret selling it because it was a beautiful backyard, and it was very open, and it had just like these big trees. It was a great place to have friends and to hang out and stuff. It was just a beautiful property. But we ended up selling the house, obviously, because we're in another house. Now, when we bought that house, the guy that we met with was actually a friend of the owner, and he didn't want to hang out at the house anymore because it was just doing the guy a favor, and they had listed it for about $135, I think. And so we offered them $125, and the guy said, "You're the first offer, you get the deal because I'm not hanging around here anymore." And there we go. We bought a house for $125 instead of, it was 10 grand less. And they took our offer, and we never actually met the owners because they're an older couple, and they came much earlier to closing and signed all the papers. So we bought it for $125. We put down $25, and so we took a loan of $100,000, and we put $10,000 roughly into it. We refinished the hardwood floors, we painted all the rooms. We put another $10,000, maybe another $5,000 into it afterwards. We stripped the cabinets and put new cabinet doors on it, painted everything in there, put new floor on the kitchen and dining. did a lot of work out back in the yard and stuff, and landscaping, as far as putting down new mulch and other things like that. And then we also renovated the bathroom, and there was a half bath. So the first house was a 1 bathroom. This one was 1.5. So we're going up a little bit. So all in all, we had, after we had put into that house, besides the 25 down, the $100,000 in debt, we put another about $15,000 into it. Now, at one point, I did get a bit scammed by one contractor because I went on Thumbtack, and I just stay away from Thumbtack. Every interaction with everybody I've had on there has just been awful. Maybe you know somebody who loves it, but I hate that website. Man, like everything I've seen and heard and interacted with has just been awful. And you have to, this is something I learned. Don't pay somebody before they do the job. Before they finish the job, you shouldn't be paying them. If they do part of the job, if they do half the job, pay them 40%. Don't pay them 50%. They might just not come back. Like, there's no reason to pay. So that's one thing. I paid somebody some money or whatever, and they didn't end up finishing the job, and it was very annoying. It was like I had so many other projects to do. I was replacing doors and painting them, and they were supposed to be working on the floor in this husband and wife team, and I ended up looking up their names and everything after the fact, and they were scams. Like, they came from another state, and because they're running from the law, because they had done a bunch of illegal work and scammed a bunch of people out of a lot of money. Thankfully, I got scammed out of very little money. Also in this house, we replaced the windows. Windows are the easiest investment you can do in a house. If it has old windows or needs new windows, I can replace any ranch around here that's like between a 1,300 and a 2,000 square foot home. I can replace all your windows in about 5 hours for $2,000, or something like that. And it is well worth doing. It looks much better, makes the home look nice. And it's really easy because you just, I mean, unless you have metal ones, like metal windows that have like a frame that goes behind the studs and stuff, those windows are a pain in the neck. That will take you days. I don't even want to mess with those houses. But I've had the fortunate luck of having houses that have standard windows where you just pop off some of the trim work, you unscrew some things, or most of the windows I actually like just slide the windows together, the top part and the bottom part, and then twist it like this, and it just pops right out. And then clean it up, put some caulk in there after I fitted the window, stick it in, screwed in, it's done, and put my trim work back on. It's great. It's easy to do windows. So that was one thing I learned in the process. Also, hardwood floors. That's one thing that we've done at this house. Don't do it yourself if you can find somebody. It is a lot of work, it's a lot of time, and it is very dusty. I found somebody, thankfully I called around, finally found somebody that was a connection of somebody else, got a bunch of references, and this guy has done, we're in our 3rd house that he's done, and he's about to come back this next weekend and do a couple more rooms in an addition that we're doing. So I highly recommend, if you can find a contractor that you know and they've done work for you, just stick with them. That is great. And hardwoods is something definitely pay somebody to do, unless that's already your skill set. If you want to go learn it, definitely just go try it. Yeah, that's what I always say. Like, I'm willing to try some things, but after I looked into it enough, I was like, no way, I'm not doing that. Especially for the price, because when we redid our house there, he stained them to a color we wanted, and did 3 coats and of water-based polyurethane, and it was I'd say about $2,200. No, yeah, $2,350 I think was precisely the number, and that was a really good deal. I felt like, for the amount of time and the cost of renting equipment and learning how to use it, and I think it was a good deal. Now, when we sold that house, that was 2017 when we bought it. 2019. Whew, man, this year is going so fast. That was just last year that we sold that house. We lived in it for 2 years, again, to take advantage of the tax. And this was in the spring, so we were always buying and selling in like the opportune time. We listed that house, and my agent said, oh, 190 maybe, or something like that. We put it, or 185 or something. I thought he was still being careful. A bunch of my friends were saying otherwise, that like you could get more for it. So we listed it for 199, and somebody came in and gave us an offer for 205. And we bought this house for 125, put 10, 15 into it, and we only owed less than 100,000 on it. So we profited a good margin there. But we had done quite a bit of our own work, and we were in a market that was going up. So we had a lot of things going in our advantage. And I can't really like tell you what the next market's going to be. There's obviously going to be some kind of crash or some housing cycle going down at some point. Everybody's saying it. Everybody's expecting it. We just don't know when. So starting a process like this is not impossible, though, because you can always find a good deal in any market. And that's what I believe. And we found good deals at this point. Incredible deals, even in an expensive market. And in a downturn market, you can still find some. People will still move. People still need houses. You can still make money doing it. So after we sold that house for 205, it was actually, some of that number was actually for a down payment for their mortgage and stuff. So we actually like netted like 80 or something like that, 87,500. And we moved into an apartment complex because I couldn't find any good deals. Zillow was one place. Now here's a couple places that you can go look. Go type in properties for sale by a bank is one way you can do it. Go to, like, type in a bank, Wells Fargo REO Properties, and go search on there, or type in PNC and like you'll get some document. And these are always a pain in the neck to like look through because it's not like using Zillow, but these you can find some bank-owned properties that they're trying to get rid of, and sometimes you'll find a really good deal. But I typically stick with Zillow. Type in, so we're going to type in Greenville, South Carolina. This is where I live. For sale. And we're going to go over to a sale price of, there's probably not a lot right now because from what I understand, I always hit, so my target market, I put like 125. I put a minimum of $1 just to knock out stuff that I don't want to see. And I put like a minimum of $1. I get rid of houses, apartments, townhomes, manufacturing lots of land. And sometimes I'll go back through if there's not a lot on the market and I'll check a bunch of these boxes and open my parameters up because sometimes people don't put in the right information. And then I don't bother with any of the other settings. Now, one thing that you need to do is go to, okay, here's the map button. You need to know your area. So I know that living here, I know that the majority of East Greenville, as it's known, most of this area is like where everybody wants to live. And you can even see kind of, when you look at an area, you can kind of see where, when you type in numbers, you'll see where the majority of the dots are for like, that are sitting around. This area in West Greenville is not where everybody wants to live. Spartanburg, as we call it over here, this way, a lot of people don't want to live over that way, and a lot of people don't want to live in like downtown Greer or like South Greenville. But I knew that this area is a great area. Now we found another home after we moved into an apartment that was down in this South Greenville area. It was almost worth living in, but it was still far enough from a lot of things that we decided we'd rather just flip it. And so that area, it was right on an up-and-coming park. It was on what they call the Swamp Rabbit Trail. It's a biking and walking, running trail that goes from northern Greenville through southern Greenville. And so it was a prime piece of real estate as far as something that's up and coming, because as this area became more popular, East Greenville, it expanded, and most of the properties, even on the edges of it, got more expensive, and people were willing to buy and take over that area. And Greenville has been a pretty up and coming city from what I understand, and a lot of people have been moving here, so your target area is growing a lot. And nowadays I hear people are willing to live anywhere, and obviously people do live everywhere in Greenville, but it's surprising how expensive houses have gotten here and spread out. Obviously we have a lot of people coming from the west jacking up our prices. So when we were in the apartment complex, because we were looking for a house, and thankfully we actually spent a month over in Europe working with some friends on a mission field there, and so it was nice not to have to take care of a house, but at the same time we were looking for a house to move into. And when we found this house in southern Greenville, we initially wanted to buy it, but this was a fun one. So the person posted on Zillow for $80,000. No, $85,000, sorry. I think it was 3 days later, they listed it for $85,000. And I knew right there, this is going to be a good deal. I looked at the house. It was a mess. It needed roof. It had roof leaks. It needed complete gutting of like bathrooms and everything. It was just awful. Hardwood floors need to be redone. Paint. It had like ceilings that had designs on it and stuff. It was a mess. The yard was well overgrown. It was crazy. It needed gutters and on some parts of it. It needed a whole new HVAC system. It needed a new water heater. It needed so much stuff. But it was worth doing. It was a really fun experiment. So we had enough to buy it and make a good offer on it. What we did instead is we didn't obviously offer $80,000 because I'm not going to give them full price, because I knew that the amount of money that it would take to fix it would be close to $40,000. So we offered them $70,000. They called us that same day and they said they have a bunch of offers in, but they're worried. This lady who was selling this house was from California and she's going through some difficult times, and she was worried that we'd back out like some of the other people and didn't want to deal with that at all. And so we ended up offering $70,000, and I said, and my agent told them, like, this guy is for serious, like for reals, is not going to back out. There's no reason for us to back out. We like the house, we're going to buy it, and whatever. So they went with our offer for $70,000. And in their listing, they had listed it as on city sewer. And to us, that was very important. And because initially when we bought the house, we were going to move into it. We do our inspection, we found out it's not on city sewer. It is on septic. And the cost to put it on sewer in this town, you have to pay both a water fee and a tap fee and all this. It's crazy. And after you drill and dig and stuff, it was coming out to about $10,000 to connect this house to the sewer, the city sewer. And that was way more than I wanted. And also because they had listed it incorrectly, I was not willing to do this. So I told my agent, hey, we can't do this house because they did not list this correctly, and I don't have the kind of money to do that and do the other renovations that we want to do. So he went and told them, and they said, well, we really need to sell the house. Will you take it for $60,000? And you don't really buy houses, even in that condition, for $60,000 around here. So it's worth looking into and pursuing things that you might not think that you could get, because we've had examples with other houses that we pursued, and it's worth putting out the effort, because you never know what's going to work out. So with this house, we bought it for $60,000, and we ended up putting about a total of $93,000 into it. I'd say 95 just to be round. And in the end, we had listed it for $150,000 because this market in this area there told us that's what it would be worth. Now I had a couple drawbacks to why we did not end up getting that price, because in the laundry room there's a unique thing here. At the end of a carport that is attached to a house in Greenville area, or maybe it's in the south too, there's always a room at the end of that that's usually for storage, and a laundry room. That's where your laundry fixtures are. So I added a doorway because most women do not like to walk out into their carport to enter another door to go do the laundry. So I added another door in the kitchen or dining room that went to this laundry and just had some steps down. I did not add an HVAC vent to that room. It was not heated and cooled airspace. And because of those lost like 15 square feet, the inspector who inspected this property just marked us off and like compared it to houses that were much lower than what this house was actually comparable to. We were not able to contest that because the loan the people were getting was from a government FHA loan, and they're very stringent. And from what my realtor said, he's contested many and appealed many inspections and valuations, appraisals, and they've never won, especially against government stuff. It just doesn't work. So we ended up selling that house not for $150, it was like $140 basically. But after realtor fees and different things like that, it was like $136. Actually, it was lower than that. It was like $134, and then that was $134 that we just took, that we got to use to buy another house. But because we owned this house for 5 months, that does not get us to the 2-year rule. Also, we did not live in this house, so that does not get you into the 2-year rule. That means you have to pay capital gains tax on it. And my initial calculations were that we were going to have to pay about $8,000 in capital gains tax. I don't think that's the case, but I really don't know, because at the end of the year, when I start typing all my tax information in, or at the beginning of the next year, I'm going to find out. And I really just have no clue what's going to happen at that point, because it's so complicated to figure out some of those numbers. I've sat down with some attorneys and some accountants, and they all give me different ideas of what it's going to look like, because of my work situation. It's kind of complicated too. So that number is just out there, elusively, you know, hanging on the edges. I really don't know what it's going to cost to pay the taxes on. But that's one thing that you have to know, is if you don't live in the house and you don't keep it for 2 years, you don't get to get away tax-free. You can do a thing where you like flip the house into any gains you make off it. You don't have to pay taxes on it, or even defer the taxes if you put it into a like-minded or like property, another similar property that's going to be an investment property or something. But because we were moving into a house that was our house, it was not, just didn't work for us because we couldn't just put it into another investment property. We need to live in this house. So that is a side note to our whole financial experiment and flipping houses and stuff. But as far as things that I learned in that house of what to do and what not to do, flattening ceilings is mixed. So these ceilings in the house were like design patterns with mud and stuff. I don't know if I would go and flatten ceilings again. It took me about 40 hours, but I was using I was hand sanding it. So what we had to do was like scrape it. We'd spray it down with water. We'd scrape off what mud came up. Then we put another layer of mud over it and we sanded it. I probably would have bought or rented a pole sander and used that. That would have been faster from what I understand. Whether or not it was worth doing, I don't know. I'm still up in the air on that, because that is 40 grueling hours I was very unhappy about having to do. Bathtub. This I thought was a cast iron, or no, I thought the bathtub needed to be refinished. I ended up in the end taking out the whole unit and everything and putting in a new bathtub, acrylic bathtub, and 3-piece shower stall unit. And that was a massive job. Cast iron bathtubs, taking them apart, smashing with sledgehammer, oh man, like that was a huge job. It would have been worth, in the end, paying the $600 to the guys who were going to refinish it. They wanted $600 to refinish that bathtub, and I called several companies. That was a pretty good price. I should have done that. Taking out a cast iron tub was grueling and definitely not worth doing. It would have been a lot easier to just have them refinish it and then put in a 3-piece unit above it to refinish the walls. The rest of the stuff is pretty easy. Replacing a toilet, replacing vanity. I always go with a cabinet manufacturer, local, who builds the cabinet doors, and then I paint them. Usually I rent a sprayer, which I've been doing for several things. I'll rent a sprayer because it makes a nice flat finish. We ended up hanging the cabinet doors in one of the rooms. We put hooks in the corners of the ceiling, hung them on a metal wire, and sprayed them. But this actually ended up with a lot of lines because it was our first time, and me and a friend did it. There were a lot of like drip marks and stuff, and so I had to like resand and like redo a lot of things on there and throughout the house. So if you use a sprayer, you really have to know what paint you're using in it, and you have to be careful, otherwise you're going to get drip marks because we put too much in some places. So those were a couple things that I learned. Also, if you want to, if you want to grow a yard very quickly, grass, and you want something green there, Kentucky 31, I think it's called, and fescue, I think was the seeds I put down. I put a mix. I mixed it, put it down, I put fertilizer out, and then I put hay over it and watered it religiously, or the mower would get so knotted and stuck from trying to eat through how thick the grass, whatever was coming up. I don't even know at this point which one it was, but when I put those two seeds together in that combination, I don't know, it grew pretty crazy. So those are a couple experiences with that house. Now, when we moved into this house, this was a new connection. So I'd always been looking on Zillow. I'd been looking at REO homes by various banks. I looked up every bank that I could that sold homes in our area. I had looked at Craigslist, Facebook. Facebook tended to be way more expensive, and Nextdoor was very similar in that it was also very expensive. it looks like I'm being told that my stream is not working at the moment. Hold on. Let's see, do we get, okay, okay. It looks like my stream is coming back. That was oddity. Maybe my computer just doesn't like what I'm doing right here. Okay, so going back to what I was saying is, I think I was talking about we were selling that house. We sold that house, and now when you're looking for houses, you can just look everywhere you can. But you're gonna find probably some of your best deals word of mouth and from friends. So I was actually sitting down, having dinner at a friend's house, and asking about houses in their neighborhood, and he knew of another person at our church who was selling a house in our neighborhood, and we ended up contacting them, and we bought the house from them. But we didn't actually buy it right at the beginning. We waited some time because we didn't think we'd initially be able to afford it. We ended up, it was kind of a complicated process. I'm kind of surprised that we pulled off what we did. So we bought this house. From that last house, after we sold it for like whatever, we had $136,000, a little bit less than that actually, like $132,000 to work with, and they wanted about $150 was the minimum when we finally had to sit down and like buy it from them. I did not use my agent this time because the other person was also an agent. I had been a former agent, and she worked at a law firm where they do closings on properties, and because of the cost of having an agent that time, we wouldn't be able to afford the house. So we actually took a loan from our bank for, I think, to make up the remaining difference. It was like $30,000 from our bank, and that allowed us to purchase the house, do a little bit of work on it, and then be able to move into it. But that's not exactly what we did. We purchased the house and immediately ran that loan into a home equity line of credit. So that $30,000 then got pushed into a HELOC, and at the rates that we were getting, it was so good, it was worth fixing up the house. So we did the addition on it and stuff like that. That was kind of the plan from the beginning, and we got a HELOC on this place, and this house was technically not like loanable or livable because we had to take out a fireplace and a chimney, and we took down some load-bearing walls, and we did a bunch of stuff. When they were doing the inspection for our home equity line of credit, they only took pictures from the outside. They did not even come inside because of COVID. If it was not for COVID, we would not have been able to do what we did. So that was pretty crazy of an experience. But things that I've learned in this house, what's worth doing, what's not worth doing. I would, again, say hardwoods. I definitely pay my guy to do it every time. It's just not worth doing. A couple other things is tile work. I found a great tile guy, and I'm paying him to do tile work in the new part of the house for the bathroom, because I've looked into like how to put hardy board down, the comparisons to the new Detra stuff, and whether or not that's worth doing. I would say do the hardy board, don't do the Detra, and find a tile guy to do it. We're doing a floor and a floor to ceiling shower walls, so have them do that. Plumbing and electrical, I always do those unless it's drains. So plumbing, I probably showed this on my channel at some point. I have a bunch of tools in here in my office. This is a PEX crimper. You just put like the end of the crimp in here and just crunch it until this light turns blue, and then you have that on the end of a pipe. I don't know if I have any pipes here to do that with. I probably have one that I like mashed up here. You can't really see it in here, but in this bag I have a pipe and a crimp on here, and you just crimp it down and it crimps your connections. Super easy, anybody can do it. Highly recommend doing this. Electrical work is also very easy. I don't have my tools in here for it, but just splicers, wire cutters, and things like that, wire nuts, lots of wire. You need lots of wire, and doing those things saved me a lot of money. We actually replaced, the hot water heater was in the new part of the house that we wanted to renovate, and we didn't want that unit sitting there and taking up space. So what I actually ended up doing was a friend again at church. This is like, if you can have connections at church, this will help you out greatly in many ways. His father ran a company that they sell gas fireplaces, and they also sell tankless gas hot water heaters. So he got me a good deal on one, and I purchased that. We paid a gas company, because the one thing, I'm not going to do gas, like, because I'm just worried about having problems with that. And we put that on the back of the house. They ran gas to it, and then I paid about, I think it cost me about $500 to $600 in the end. I put in all new 3/4 inch PEX main pipes the entire length of the house, because we're going to be putting a master bathroom over this side. We're doing bathroom on that side, and then putting PEX connections to everything. I changed all the PEX except for like the actual copper connections that were in the walls. I left those and I converted it, and so it was about $500-600 and probably 4 hours worth of work under in the crawl space to connect that all to the new hot water tankless, the tankless water heater, and that was worth doing. So I'd say, like, learn how to do plumbing stuff and learn how to do electrical stuff. Plumbing drains are much more complicated because of the math and stuff, that you have to have a certain slope, and I paid some plumbers to do drains. So we had a bathroom, so there's a shower, a sink, a toilet, and there's a washer in there because the laundry is in the bathroom. And I was trying to figure out how to do the drains, the slopes and stuff, and how many vents through the ceiling you have to have and stuff. And I was like, well, I could probably do this. The more I looked into it, the more I realized I probably have no clue what I'm about to get into. So I paid somebody. I paid him, I think it was $1,450. $1,450 to do drains. And in supplies, as far as materials, it was a few $100. It wasn't a lot. They spent 3 days putting pipes, man, all over those walls. And I know this guy and the company he works for is very good and reputable what they do. Wow, that was way more than I would have done in like 2 or 3 weeks, the amount of work. So it was well worth it to pay a plumber to do drains. But as far as like electrical coming in, like getting power from point A to B or getting water from point A to B, I have no problem doing that. I highly recommend you learn how to do that, because it will save you a lot of money to know how to like change out outlets, change out light switches, put in new light switches or lights and stuff like that. Also with lights, you want to look at canless LEDs. I'll put a link in the description. On Amazon, we buy these ones. You get about 12 of them in pack for about $110, and they're amazing. So you just cut a hole in the ceiling, and you just stick a box up there, plug your light into it, and then it just like clips right into the ceiling. I don't think I have. Yeah, I installed all of them already. I don't have any right here. But those things are super easy to wire up and install, and they're very bright, and they're also dimmable. Highly recommend using those. Other things that I would say as far as what to do and what not to do. Vinyl side work, I think I could definitely learn how to do that. But as flashing metal work that you do, the trim work, like not the drip edge, but the metal flashing that like goes over the edges by your soffits and the edge of the roof on the outside of the house, you have to have a metal brake, which is really expensive to buy. But you can rent it from Home Depot. But at the same time, you have to know how to use a metal brake before you even rent it, because there's some finesse. It's like artwork, bending stuff to the right angles and cutting it all and putting it in place. So I recommend finding a good guy who can do metalwork and flashing on roofs and stuff. I do pay a guy to do roofing because after my first experience, they're just so much faster at it, and it's worth paying somebody to do that. But I think with electrical, I do everything up to the panel, and my guy does, I have a guy in Duke Energy, which is our power company in this area, buried our power lines to our house, and then we also have kind of a second house out back, and we buried a new line there, and our electricians do the meter bases and the panels and stuff like that. I highly recommend having an electrician do that part, and in a lot of places, I don't even know that you can do the work on it in some places, but I think there's probably more that I'm allowed to do than I am doing, but I mostly just get the wires up to or change wires out from the panel. I'll turn the panel off and add new wires and stuff like that. I don't have a problem doing that. But if you can learn things like that, and as long as you're taking precautions, that will save you a lot of money. It'll save you hassle of dealing with trying to like find contractors. It's the biggest thing is communicating with contractors, because some of them are so busy right now, have so much business, they can't even take on new stuff. So that's kind of the process where we're at. we're still working on this addition, and that's kind of the process of where we got. So I'd recommend, look, if you don't have credit, you need to find a way to get credit because the reality of you saving up money to buy a house is pretty low. You can do the Dave Ramsey stuff and save up a down payment. I recommend that. But even in my state, that where we were at, I was not making a lot of money at all in my initial job when we first bought our house, and especially like working at Chick-fil-A prior to that, and being able to afford a loan based on that income alone. It tells me that like anybody can do it. It's definitely worth doing, especially if you're going to stay in an area for a long time. So that's some of my advice there. Like, learn what you can, find out what you can't do, and what's worth paying somebody to do, and just be willing to do difficult things for it. Because I was helping a neighbor out today, his house, and they're taking out some load-bearing walls over the weekend. A contractor will be coming and doing that, and I just realized I have this listed as news and politics, and I don't think that's right. This should be how to and style. Hold on, let me fix that up. Why is this under news and politics? Boom. Okay. So I was under his house today, and man, like, they need a sump pump, first off, because there's like 2-3 inches of water at some places. But I was under there doing some electrical work for them and getting wet, muddy, dirty. And that's part of home ownership. If you're not doing stuff that is kind of dirty, going up in your attic and like moving insulation and like working with stuff, and you're paying people to do all those things, like, you're really losing out a lot of money for something that could be very simple for you to fix and figure out how to do. So that's my admonition to you. It's just, if you're going to get into real estate, it's lucrative, you can make money, but it's going to be a lot of work, and it's not going to be like Fixer Upper until you get to the point where you have millions of dollars and you have lots of people working for you. So if you have any questions, leave comments, like, subscribe. I appreciate it. Patreon, check me out there. And we'll see you guys next week. Also, one last thing before I go, because I don't want to miss this, and I'm probably going to not be able to play my outro music. I still have to figure out OBS. Is I had talked about having a conversation with a friend who voted for Biden. And in my circles of friends, that's like unusual. But I had said that we were going to have a conversation. I was going to sit down with him, and that's going to be one of my episodes. And I'm still planning on doing that. It's just I was sick last weekend, and that was when we were going to meet, so we didn't end up meeting. And we're going to hopefully meet sometime in the next week or something. I really would love to get an episode out with that conversation, with that interview before Thanksgiving, but I don't know the reality of that. But by the end of the month, we should be able to get there. So share the podcast with a friend if you can, and we will see you guys next time.